Welcome back to Questing Beast. I am Ben. Today we're taking a look at the horrendous Hounds of Hindenburg. This is a very spooky hex crawl type adventure created by Liam Padraig O'Cullinan, and it is for character levels 2 through 4. Now it says here that it is created for the old school Essentials rule set, but it's going to work perfectly fine with any old school-ish D&D system. For example, my game Knave 2nd Edition. Now, being for levels 2 through 4, this could work really well as a follow-up adventure for the previous Merry Mushman adventure that I looked at, which was Nightmare over Ragged Hollow. It has a similar tone, a similar feel, and I think it just ups the stakes a little bit with a wider area to explore. So what do we get inside here? Well, just like the previous adventure, this one has a detachable cover. Still not a huge fan of that, but it has its uses. On the back here, we can see the hex crawl area that you'll be traversing. Each of these hexes is 3 miles across, and almost all of them have something fun there to explore. On the inside, we have a map of Hindenburg, the town that's going to be your base of operations, and we have some random tables here. What lies beyond the Kryptwood, for if they wander off the map, you can generate some locations that are nearby and why you would want to go there. And on the inside, we have a number of maps. These are replicated inside the adventure itself, but it's nice to have them here for easy reference. And inside we have a brief introduction to the OSR, similar to their last adventure, just to keep you caught up on the playstyle if you're not familiar with it. Now the background here is that 1,000 years ago, this region, the Kryptwood, was ruled by the Kryptwood tyrant. Eventually he died and was imprisoned, and his spirit and his hounds sealed magically inside his tomb by a number of factions, which we will meet later. But 6 weeks ago, these protections were weakened by a number of treasure hunters, some highwaymen, who broke in and have released the spirits of his hounds. His hounds are now running around wreaking absolute havoc in this area, killing people, and the villagers are getting desperate. They need someone to solve this problem. Some of the factions you can encounter include the Crones, which is 3 witches, which do a lot of magical cures and potions and stuff for the village, but are quite powerful and have some evil intent as well, which can be used for you or against you. There is the highwaymen themselves, the leader of whom has broken a promise to marry one of the Crones, so they're annoyed at him, and he is currently trying to run away with the wife of someone inside the village, so there's an entanglement there as well. There's Belinda's Bastards, which is a group of mercenaries and adventurers, although they like to be called knights errant, that were hired by the town to try and take care of this problem, but they have not done so, and in fact have suffered heavy losses. And then there's Hindenburg itself, which is the town full of all of the villagers. Now, to defeat the hounds, there is, of course, a number of solutions, because this is an OSR-style adventure, which means that players can interact with it and deal with this problem in any way that they want, or they can ignore it entirely and just see how things play out over time. But some of the major solutions are using the priest in the town to renew the ritual or the spell that seals the tyrant in there along with his hounds. You could use the Crones because they have a spell that you can use that will banish him forever. And there is a devil's bargain where you can actually make a deal with the tyrant in order to solve the problem for the villagers, but probably cause a problem for someone else. There's a whole bunch of hooks down here that can give you reasons for why the PCs might be involved. But of course, if you just wander into the area, there's plenty of reasons for them to want to get treasure and explore and deal with the monsters there. I really like the tone and the art style all throughout this. It's a little bit spooky. I think it would work really well for a Halloween adventure, and it would work really well with something like Dolmenwood. Anytime you have a deep, dark forest with a lot of fairy tale-esque themes, it's going to mesh really well together. And there's lots of good adventures out there that have that tone that you can string together into a larger world. Now next we're going to start digging into the actual meat of the adventure, but first a quick shout out to today's sponsor. This video is sponsored by Huckleberry, a dark and weird RPG inspired by the mythology of the American Old West. Players are bounty hunters that track down monsters corrupted by supernatural radiation. Huckleberry is classless and trait-based, with highly flexible character creation and scenarios that start with folk horror investigations before culminating in pulpy action showdowns. Resolution is fast and cinematic, with a unique ace mechanic that allows players to make their own luck. Grab the early access PDF using the link below and get all of the updates for free as they are released. So here's our town of Hindenburg. We have rules for how the law and the economy works here. It used to be more prosperous when there was an old silver mine that was active, but it is no longer. You can, of course, visit this silver mine. It's one of the several dungeons that you can explore throughout the adventure. And we have a variety of NPCs here that you can interact with that all have very concrete, very specific, very fun to roleplay personalities. For example, we got Lord and Lady Hindenburg. The current Lord is over 80 years old and aggressively senile. He spends most of his conscious hours demanding to be taken sledding, regardless of the weather. Real power is used by his inappropriately young wife, a student of the New Learning who regards reports of ghostly hounds as mere peasant superstition. She attributes the savage bodies found in the woods to the work of a particularly vindictive badger. We have Ulvar the Poacher, we have the pastor who can help you seal the tomb, but he doesn't necessarily want to because he's been rejected by the townsfolk. He has a bad relationship with the town, so you're going to have to convince him to actually help these people who hate him. We have Morton Brockle the Miller, and his wife has run away with the leader of the highwaymen in the region. He, however, does not know that. He thinks that she is in fact dead, so that can be a fun surprise for the players to reveal. There's also a blacksmith and a coroner and an innkeeper, and each of these have ties to a number of other characters in the town. There's this entanglement going on where if you pull on any thread, you're going to be connected to other NPCs and have little adventures that you can investigate. Here's Doug the Bounty Hunter. Seems like a very grizzled professional bounty hunter, but in fact, he's never done this before, but he's not going to tell you that initially. Fortunately, he has a great personality, so he does help you out with reaction rolls when you meet monsters. Here's the Kryptwood entirely. We see we have a lot of it is just forests, anything that's these green bushy areas, but all of these are locations that you can find if you do a bit of exploring in each of those hexes. Some monsters you might find include the Kryptwood Hound, the ghostly hounds you're looking for, the owl boar, the crab spider, the leshy, cave bears, hangwood trees, highwaymen, and so forth. And each of these has a nice short write-up. Some of them it's a very straightforward, and sometimes it is a bit more elaborate. A lot of them are funny as well. So you have the giant dolmen, and if you travel underneath this dolmen, you come out on the other side 15 years older and draped in robes of rich azure silk and carrying a playful baby seal. You have no idea what happened to you. Adventurers who have passed through the arch are addressed reverently by Fey characters as Lord/Lady Keeper of the Privy Seal. I love little touches like that. It is so funny that they've just been, kidnapped by the Fae for the last 15 years. They don't remember anything about it, but you can work that into later encounters with the Fae if you want to. You can meet the 3 crones, who look like beautiful women during the day and horrible, ugly crones during the night. They can make you potions of loathing, of love, or of indifference, and they have flying monkeys that they can send after you. An infested silver mine, a woodcutter's hut, ancient statues, old towers. Just lots of classic fairy tale stuff, so that players have a point of reference because they've read fairy tales, they know what this genre is like, but then you can put little twists on it so that it is surprising. There's also actual tie-ins to the previous adventure. So Sly George here, the leader of the highwaymen, his cousin Fergus is a bandit leader in a nearby town called Ragged Hollow. You can just place that right next door. Here's a great magic item. The Cloak of Many Faces, a motley patchwork cloak. When the wearer pulls the hood over their head, they acquire a distinctive and random new face, can be used 3 times a day. Might want to find an online face generator so you can show them what they look like every time they put their cloak on. You can visit the Thirsty Sprite, which is a tavern in which there is a bored ogre and some pixies and a pale elf that you can gamble with. Now, this elf will win pretty much every hand of cards that you play against him because he has the Ring of the High Roller. But in exchange for playing with him, you can learn more about the setting. This is really great to have a character that just gives the players information, because you need to give players information so that they can act on it. Don't hide that stuff. Now, the first of these several little dungeons that you can investigate is the silver mine itself. 50 years ago, the miners hacked their way into a large natural cavern connected to the underworld. Having discovered a rich vein of silver, the mining company was too focused on potential profits to notice the threats that lay hidden in the deep places of the world. The entire workforce was massacred when a pack of brain spiders emerged from the depths and killed or infected the unfortunate miners. The mine is now a colony for these patient, intelligent, and hungry creatures. They are in fact pretty terrifying enemies. They climb inside your head, or they lay eggs in your head, and then the little spiders crawl over your brain and slowly devour it, before fighting with each other until one emerges bursting out of your head. And it looks like a brain with spider legs. Just like in Ragged Hollow, the design and the layout is all very clear and simple and well done. We have this little bit of read aloud text at the start of any location, which you can just read out loud, because it's nice and short and it doesn't waste your time. And anything that's in bold gets more detail down here. This is a very effective way to do it, but I did notice a couple of times throughout the adventure when there was something in the read aloud text that the players would not know right away. So I think the authors need to be a little bit more careful with that, because unless you scan it carefully, you might give away too much information. Some great spooky encounters. You can find a survivor in the mine that says, "I can feel them. They're eating my thoughts. They ate my mother's face. They ate my wedding day. They ate my name." That's nice and creepy as the brain spiders slowly take over his body. There are actual explosive barrels in here, which is really fun to see. They're just full of essentially nitroglycerin. And that stuff is great just to create a lot of chaos in a campaign. When you give the players a gigantic bomb and you don't know when they're going to set it off, it becomes very hard to railroad them. You can find the Scepter of the Blind King beneath the earth, which gives you some very powerful effects, but it does give you also a curse that's going to really mess up your life until you find a way to remove it. But one of the plus sides is that there's these horrible mutated elf creatures that will think that you are their king and will follow you around. So that's always nice. You can also visit the Ancient Villa. White marble breaks the green monotony of the Kryptwood, revealing an ancient villa partially consumed by the relentless growth of the forest. Once the seat of the Tarquinius family, a storied dynasty who ruled the Kryptwood for generations, abandoned when the last scion of the line, Lucius Tarquinius, the Kryptwood tyrant, was overthrown and executed. There's NPCs that you can encounter, like Elora, the merciless foul-mouthed cutthroat and the employee of Sly George, but she's been wounded in here and is pretty much helpless and at your mercy. Now you can decide to help her, but she's not a good person, is not necessarily going to be grateful for that. On the other hand, if you decide that you want to overthrow Sly George, you can probably get her to help because she also hates him and wants to run the party. Here's some fun little cursed items, the death masks. So each of these has a different face on it, and if you put the mask on your own face, then you gain a piece of knowledge about the past of the setting. Now the cost is you have to make a save, and if you fail, then you automatically absorb a little piece of personality that you have to integrate into your PC. There's a mirror room where in one mirror you can actually see the Kryptwood tyrant. Now he is still sealed away in his tomb in a different part of the forest, but this gives the players an opportunity to talk with him and negotiate with him before they even get there. I think that's really smart. It allows them to plan ahead and to decide what their relationship with this guy is actually going to be. Lastly, there's the tyrant's tomb itself. Inside the tomb, Belinda the Bloody is leading her group of mercenaries inside to actually free the tyrant, although not all of them may be aware of this. She's doing this because the tyrant has promised her wealth and power. She, along with her entire retinue, are actually all the illegitimate children of one noble in a different kingdom, and by serving the tyrant, she may actually be able to take that throne. In this tomb, we might find some Kryptwood hounds, alabaster golems, we could find fire beetles, ochre jellies, or tomb guardians. I like the design of these quite a lot. It's an 8-foot-tall automaton hewn from mossy limestone. Most powerful of the tomb's automated defenses, has 4 faces etched into its cubic head, one sad, one angry, one frightened, and one triumphant. The head rotates to communicate warning, no threats detected, that the guardian has lost more than half of its hit points, or that it has recently slain an intruder. Not only is that a really fun image, it's a great way to communicate information to the players. But Belinda the Bloody and her bastard group are not the only faction inside this tomb. There's also the Hawk Sisters and the Boar Knights, the factions that initially imprisoned the tyrant inside this tomb. Now, just because they're dead doesn't mean that they can't help you or hinder you in a number of ways. Here's a fun trap. It's a mosaic room where you can see that there is a character in the mosaic who looks like he is out of place. His clothing style looks more modern than the rest of the clothing styles of the characters. And if you touch this mosaic, then you also get transported inside of it. That's a great way to signpost danger, and the way that you would actually rescue someone who had this happen to them is you'd have to chip them out of the mosaic and then cast a stone to flesh spell on them. Here's a great tool that you can use, a malfunctioning golem that is now just trying to walk straight. That's all it can do. It can't do anything else. So you can use it to haul large amounts of treasure, but it can only walk in straight lines. So when it comes to an intersection, it'll either walk through the intersection or just walk into a wall. You'll have to physically rotate it and it'll walk off in the other direction. A clever party could find all sorts of interesting uses for that. You can meet Lucretia in her tomb. She is the wife of the tyrant. And I like one of her abilities here, which is Charisma Drain. She drains your charisma away to make herself more beautiful. She can also play her lyre to cast Charm Person or Sleep or Confusion. But one of the most interesting things is that she will tell you the truth about her husband, which is that he is in fact a man of his word. If you make a deal with this tyrant, for example, that you release him and he just leaves and goes somewhere else, he will in fact honor that. This is a really good trap right here, the Serpentine Eye. It's an eye carved above a door. It glows bright red and fires a crimson ray at adventurers attempting to cross the threshold, save versus wands, or instantly incinerated. It can be circumvented by blinding the eye with paint or fabric. That is a really nice design. The reason is because it is first well signposted. There is a pile of ash in front of the door, so you know that something got disintegrated. And it's a very dangerous trap, so it can kill you instantly if you're not careful, but it is also easy to disable if you just think about it for a second. Now, a device I'm not as much a fan of is the golem control. So you can go into this one room and you find this strange contraption full of levers and knobs and so on. And if you spend enough time and you make a good roll, then you figure out how the contraption works and it lets you turn off all of the golems in the facility. For me, I think that is just too abstracted. It would be a lot more interesting if the machine actually had some of its buttons and knobs described, and players could fiddle with them and test them, and it would make the golems act differently. That would give the players a new toy to play with, a new lever of control over the scenario. In fact, now that I think about it, that's kind of like the adventure in Summer's End that I wrote, The Alchemist's Repose, because it also has a way to control golems in that. But you know what? Controlling golems is fun. It's fun to actually have power over the different NPCs and things in your environment in a D&D session, especially when they're dangerous at first, but then they become powerful for you. You can also unearth the Hawk Sisters and the Boar Knights, who are undead now, but they're good undead. They're going to help you deal with the tyrant if they know that he's going to possibly be returning to the mortal world again. And they all have really fun personalities to roleplay. So for example, the Hawk Sisters always act like disappointed school teachers. They're willing to assist, but will still chastise adventurers relentlessly for foolishly opening random sarcophagi. Do you want to get tetanus? Or for disturbing ancient crypts? Just because a fellow is dead doesn't mean you can barge into his home. And finally, we get to the Kryptwood tyrant at the very end. Are you going to imprison him? Are you going to banish him? Are you going to free him? There's going to be consequences for the region, no matter what you do. At the end, there's a nice appendix with an NPC cheat sheet to remind you who all the different characters are, in case you can't remember where they were in the adventure, and a whole bunch of magic items, again, all described in the adventure, but it's nice to have them in one place for easy reference. And I love this appendix of potential retainers or replacement characters, because your characters are going to die and you need someone to replace them. Or you need to gather some extra villagers or nearby ne'er-do-wells to help you raid a tomb. Grab one of these guys. So that's the horrendous Hounds of Hindenburg. The Merry Mushmen are really knocking it out of the park here with these adventures, to the point where I think that they are just a strong contender for the most consistent adventure publishers out there, right alongside Old School Essentials itself. Whether they are just picking really good writers, or perhaps they are helping edit them into shape, but these adventures capture what the OSR is supposed to be about, I think, very, very well. There's a sense of freedom, of open-endedness, and of fun that imbues almost every aspect of these books. No matter what direction you travel in, there's going to be an adventure. There's going to be people to talk to, there's going to be treasure to steal, there's going to be monsters to fight, and there's going to be situations for you to unravel and manipulate. The adventure never tells you what to do. It just presents possibilities and then allows the consequences of your choices to play out. As usual, links to where you can pick up a copy of this in PDF or in print form will be down in the description below. Also remember to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and subscribe to the Questing Beast newsletter if you want to get monthly roundups of the most interesting D&D and hobby gaming news, theory, advice, world building, sales that are happening around the internet every month. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you next time.